Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, I missed the screen.
Oh,
Little technical difficulty here, but no worries. Hello there. Hello, friends and lovers. It's Sunday. It's a comfortable day.
It's comfy day.
It is National Comfy Day. Hello, friends and lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I'm Robert Nasir. This is Amy Nasir. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you'll notice a little extra comfort in our voices. If you're watching live on videos, you should be. Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Mm-hmm. It's Pajamas Day.
It's Pajama Day, everybody. I hope that you're in your pajamas already.
Darn right.
If not, then don't go anywhere. Just keep listening and wear them right after we get done.
It is National Comfort Day, and we will talk about that. But today is Sunday, February 20th, 2022, the 51st day of this, your best year yet. With 314 days left in 2022 to make it so. As if it's not already. There are 308 days until Christmas and just 22 days. 22 days until White Day, which is the second Valentine's Day. This is the day where if you missed Valentine's Day, you can make it up. Now, the tradition in Japan and some other countries is Valentine's Day is more of a Sadie Hawkins kind of day. The gals try to romance the guys. And White Day, exactly 1 month later, March 14th, is your chance, guys. But really, either way, to give it back. So, if you missed out on the chocolate, if you missed out on the balloons, oh, we've got the balloons. If you missed out on any of that good stuff, you get one more chance. And also on this date, February 20th, 1998, Tara Lipinski becomes the youngest Olympic figure skating gold medalist ever. And if Rebecca is listening, we know she's got an up-and-coming gold medalist champion in her family, so I couldn't resist calling out Tara Lipinski, 1998 gold medalist, youngest ever. Also on this date, 1962, we need to talk about this. February 20th, 1962, before the Apollo program, but NASA sends John Glenn. Congratulations, graduates of John Glenn High School, named after John Glenn, the first American ever to orbit the Earth.
Yeah.
1962, so
Pretty
1 year
cool.
before I was born. That makes it 59 years ago. You know, we love to talk about history because we don't realize how fast history moves. And we'll talk about progress. This is amazing progress. That's 59 years later. Before that, nobody had ever done that. Well, I take that back. The Ruskies, excuse me, I'm sorry. You can tell how old I am. The Russians, actually, the Soviets, the cosmonauts,
Yes.
actually beat us out to space, but we did beat them to the moon. And the Apollo exhibit has opened at Henry Ford's the Henry Ford Museum in
Yes.
Greenfield Village. So you should be at Henry Ford Museum.
Yes, for the Apollo When We Went to the Moon exhibit. And that is going into the end of the year this year, so you have some time to go visit it, but please go visit it. It's really lovely.
It really is. You should be there, and hey, if you're in Southeast Michigan, get in touch with us. We may be able to get you those discount or even free rates. Not that it's that expensive and worth going, but the reason I thought of that was, in addition to the historical impact, the amazing progress, the amazing things that have been done, and yet how old-fashioned that seems, because it's 2022 now. Sending a guy into orbit? That's not NASA anymore, or rather, it's private companies working with NASA and average Joes, well, average billionaires, but, you know, William Shatner goes out into space, courtesy of Jeff Bezos and Amazon, but also Elon Musk and his programs, sending rockets out into space and bringing them back and landing them. It's the craziest thing. It was just 1962. Semiconductors were a new thing. Computers were running on valves, or tubes, as we say in America. And the computers were people.
Yes, they were. They were called... What were they called?
They were called computers. And the great thing about it is there was a core of women who were great mathematicians, great at doing the calculations needed to design and implement these rockets. And they called them computers, like we call machines computers. There's a great book you absolutely have to read, and a great film made about the book called Hidden Figures. There is a link to that in the show notes, and if you haven't yet seen the film Hidden Figures, or haven't read the book, the book's full title is Hidden Figures, The American Dream and the Untold Story of the Black Women Mathematicians who helped win the space race. Incidentally, you might wonder in the subtitle, well, why should we care that they were black? I thought race shouldn't be a thing. The fact that these women were able to do this job in 1960, or their story was in the 1950s, when racism, believe me, was a thing. It's a great story, great film. You should absolutely either read the book, watch the film, or do both. So, 1962, John Glenn orbits the Earth. And you think, well, okay, have we really come that far, though? Sure, private companies are now sending people and satellites and other payloads out into space. Elon Musk decides to send his Tesla out into space. We're now at the point where we can do something like that as a goof or as a test of concept. But has it changed that much? Well, also on this date, January 20th, February 20th, 1985. Greatest decade ever, except for the 70s. 1985, this is the date on which Ireland began to allow the sale of contraceptives.
Wow. So they didn't have condoms, birth control.
That's right.
And spermicides, all that stuff before
That's right.
1985 in Ireland.
It wasn't allowed to be sold. You couldn't buy it.
It's awful.
It was illegal the way that narcotics are illegal now. Little clue to what the future holds. 1985. Now, I know some of the people listening weren't alive in 1985, and that seems like a long time ago. But those were modern times. Mm-hmm. Believe me, we had semiconductors by then. We had computers. We were not savages. And yet, the government barred the sale of contraceptives. Now, when I was young in America. And when I was young, it was the 1970s, early 1980s. And there were a lot of pharmacies where you couldn't buy condoms or other contraceptives unless you were 18 or over. And the reason I say pharmacies was you couldn't go into Target or your grocery store or any of the zillion places now, including the counters of, gas stations. Everywhere you can buy prophylactics now. 1985, Ireland allows the sale of contraceptives.
Yes, you can go into any store and ask for condoms, and they'll get on the loudspeaker and they'll say, "Manager to aisle 5, we're looking for condoms."
Yeah, I need a price check on this guy over here is buying the condoms.
We have the maximum Trojans.
Yes.
Just a
great fun.
Yeah.
And that was just, now I've got to do the math, because I started the sentence, now I have to do the math. That was just 37 years ago? 47 years ago. 37 years ago. What the heck?
Yeah. Crazy,
crazy stuff. Also, this date, February 20th, it is National Comfy Day, a ridiculous holiday started by this pair of people who started a business. They presumably made the most comfy blanket. I don't care about that, but it's a great excuse to think about, well, what are your comfort foods? What are your comfort clothes? Those times when you choose to go into your comfort zone, what are your comfort items? So naturally, I've got my PJs here. You could probably guess who bought me these PJs if you can read the customization on them. And this is not arbitrary. It is National Comfy Day, but it's also not arbitrary because if you saw the thumbnail for the most recent episode of Life on Earth, the title of the show is Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir. Robert wasn't around. And the thumbnail for that episode that Amy ran solo with a special guest had her wearing these PJs.
Yeah, so these are my favorite pajamas. These are pretty well worn, kind of faded. But if you can look closely, they have a whole bunch of ghosts on them. and little outlines of pumpkins.
Ghosties and pumpkins.
Yeah, and
So obviously
so many
for
ghosts.
Christmas. Oh, wait.
Yes, for springtime. I mean,
Yeah, the producer behind... See, on the Thursday show, we have producers. We actually have people behind the scenes,
Yeah.
unlike this show, which is entirely self-produced by us. The Thursday show, the producer behind the scenes was putting together a thumbnail.
yeah.
And Amy told him, well, I'm going to do a special episode. Robert is traveling. He's out of town. Do the episode anyway. Going to bring on Linda Cordair, the great art goddess of Cordair Fine Art at Cordair.com. And so it's going to be the two of us. You and Amy provided the usual thumbnail that Linda likes to use, a cute one of her holding a champagne glass. And so, what about the picture of you? And Amy said to our trustworthy producer, I trust you to, in a trustworthy manner, choose a photograph of me and put it in the thumbnail. And what does he do? He goes on Facebook and finds a picture of Amy in the ghosty PJs. So, happy National Comfort Day. I decided to join Amy in PJs. Amy didn't do the episode in PJs, but now she has.
Here
there
I am.
you go.
Yep. So I'm feeling just super comfy today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And consistent with National Comfy Day. If that's not enough reason to celebrate, and we're going to talk about, I want to know, what are your comfort values? What do you do when you're in your comfort zone? What do you like to wear? What are your comfort foods? I know we talked once about guilty pleasures. I guess a few of these might overlap. They might count as well. But yeah, what are your comfort items? And share them in the chat. I'm going to look in the chat in just a minute. But it's also, in addition to National Comfy Day, it's National Muffin Day.
Muffins.
So when you're talking about your comfort foods, do you have a favorite muffin? I can tell you for me it's blueberry muffin. It's National Cherry Pie Day, and I was tempted to have a prop for that one because any excuse to go out and buy a cherry pie is a good and compelling reason. And finally, at the tail end here, it's Sunday, February 20th, and it is National Handcuffs Day.
Oh, for all of those police officers and their handcuffs.
I'm sure that the first thing you think of when I tell you it's National Handcuffs Day is, yes, let's honor our boys in blue and the girls in blue, our police officers who, yes, handcuffs, tools of the trade. That's what I think of when I think of handcuffs as well.
Yes, you have to be, in honor of Comfy Day and Handcuff Day, the handcuffs need to be comfortable.
Well, that gets into a conversation we had earlier. That would go back to episode 69. I'm not going to get into it. Short version, if somebody needs to be tied down, handcuffs are the wrong way to do it. There shouldn't be that much discomfort involved,
as Robert
for
said,
Pete's sake.
Right, as Robert said in our earlier conversation, bondage should be comfortable.
Bondage should be... Find a bathrobe tie or an old necktie you're never going to wear again. Those work great. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that.
Well,
I'm not even going to say it. I didn't say it.
Speaking of comfortable, we
Yes.
have a couple of wonderful comments in the
Good.
YouTubes. Lauren is definitely eating some comfy food. She's eating gumbo tonight.
Gumbo.
We've got
oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've got
There is a Louisiana-style restaurant around here that just reopened. So
yes, it's called.
We've got that on our mind.
And it's a great little restaurant name. It's called House Bayou.
House Bayou.
It's great. And one time we went to it, and they were actually playing, New Orleans-style jazz, and it was just so fun.
Oh, it was the funniest thing. This is a restaurant. It's in Royal Oak, Michigan. You should go there if you can. And they're always crowded. You can't get in. So we go there, we can't get in. They've got a few seats out on the sidewalk. We're like, oh, okay, we'll sit out on the sidewalk. Maybe we can get a decent meal. Maybe we can hear a little bit what's going on. We sit down on the seat right in front of the big windows in front of the restaurant. And what happens right after that? They open the windows. And these are swing open windows. They basically remove the front of the restaurant. We're sitting right behind the band. It was the coolest thing. And so shout out to Lauren, who is enjoying gumbo tonight. What else is going on in the chat here?
Chandler is he's making his own fried chicken tonight.
Making your own fried chicken?
Yeah, fantastically comfortable. He says, yeah, that's really great. I wonder what kind of oil. Let me know what kind of technique are you using? Are you using just regular?
Yeah, are we pan fried or deep fried?
Pan fried, deep fried.
That's
maybe
awesome.
A combination of frying a little bit and baking it a little bit.
And I'm jealous.
Sounds really great. Let me know if you're actually, using some kind of like spice You put a little flour, you put the spice in the flour, perhaps you're making it a little spicy.
Panko.
Panko.
Something.
Something like that.
Would love to know that. You had Popeye's fried chicken earlier this week.
Yes, I did.
Because while I was traveling and out of town, Amy had a visit from the great Jennifer Lionberger, famous to anybody who knows the Yarn Brook Show, one of his great sponsors and advocates. And that is cool as well, something that I missed out on. Let me just double check here, see what else is going on. Oh, Jim says, boy, you two can really dance around issues. I told you I wasn't going to spend that long on the handcuffs issue, but it is National Handcuffs Day. You've got to acknowledge these very, very important and objectively significant holidays. Absolutely.
Chandler says he's using canola oil in a big pot. It's going to be messy. I always add different spices to the flour. It's not always the same.
Good.
Well, that's wonderful.
Outstanding.
Enjoy that.
Yeah.
And be careful. Don't burn yourself.
yeah, especially if you're deep frying. We do that. Usually, lately, the only thing we deep fry are beignets.
Yes.
Speaking of New Orleans, but we haven't deep fried chicken. Usually, I go with half an inch of oil and do it pan fried. But we're due to make fried chicken. I can't even remember the last time. Now you've got me thinking about chicken. Can we wrap up the show early?
Yeah, let's do that. So we eat.
So what are we listening to this week?
I'm listening to a new, it's a new podcast for me. Let's see, what is it called? I think it's called Word of the Day.
Word of the Day.
No, I'm sorry. No, that was the other one. This is called A Way with Words.
A Way with Words. We've had enough words. Oh, you mean A Way with Words.
A Way with Words.
A Way with Words.
Yeah, so it's basically, they're talking about, they've got people who call in for the podcast.
Language, linguistics, and callers from all over.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, so people call in, they'll say, my grandma used to use this word, and I'm not entirely sure what it means. And so you have a couple of really intelligent folks who are looking these things up and telling you all these, the etymology of the word, where it came from, how it was derived, and other definitions for the word throughout history. It's really nice. Words are so fun. I love it. Words are comfy.
I just noticed on your screen how dark the studio is. The studio's not dark. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lights on in the studio. There's just a setting we've got to tweak before every show to brighten it up. So
we're bright now, aren't we?
I'm glad I happened to catch that, and sorry about any of you who thought we were getting extra comfy by making the lights super dark. We do, incidentally, have on the studio couch here, we've got the big fluffy pillows.
Ooh, big fluffy pillows.
So if that's not enough
come over
already,
and we'll...
We've also got the awesome possum here.
Yeah, we'll do a pillow fight.
Because stuffed animals go with the PJs there. And those of you who saw this one at Christmas time, he does have on the hoodie that says, "The world is full of possum-abilities." So...
It's a very optimistic possum.
It is. People have teddy bears and those kind of stuffed animals for if they're wearing PJs. And no, we've got the awesome possum there.
And he matches your beautiful pajamas.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Oh, Frank is on board. Hi, Frank. How are you doing? He says Valentine. Speaking of fans of the Yarn Brook Show, and he says the Valentine photo was nice. I've got to get that look back. That bathing suit bikini photo shot that we had on Dunn's River Falls in Jamaica. Yeah. That was good. Thank you for that, Frank. Very much appreciated. Yeah, Petya says, love the pajamas idea. Good. Then you should be wearing pajamas while you watch this. If you don't already, don't go away where you can't hear us anymore, but by all means, feel free to join us. It is National Comfort Day. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast you're listening to. What I listened to this week was a show called Life on Earth and an episode called How to Be a Passionate and Intellectual Woman.
Oh, wow. Great. That sounds really wonderful.
Yes, well, as I mentioned last week, I was traveling. I was in Arizona. I was driving around in a convertible, this black Mustang. Coolest thing. It was kind of funny because I'm from Michigan. So I go to Arizona. It's the middle of winter in Arizona. But it's Arizona. It's still 65, 70 degrees. People in Arizona are like, it's 65, 70 degrees. Why would you have the top down on a convertible?
It's wintertime in Arizona. Yeah. One must put on a coat.
Well, because
it's 60 degrees.
Because I'm from Michigan. Of course, I didn't keep the top down when it got down to 55 degrees at night. But point is, out of town, Amy does life on Earth by herself, invites Linda Cordair on. They had a great conversation. A link to that episode is in the show notes, and we'll talk a little bit about that topic, those themes, how to be a passionate and intellectual woman, except for you guys and like me, you know.
Well,
we can say woman is, you know, when we say how to be a great man, we mean women too. So
Yes.
if we say how to be a passionate woman, we can mean the men too, right?
No, there really isn't that big of a difference between men and women. And, I mean, there is a difference, but it's not huge. It's not like, you know, men have, 20 weird tentacles with, like, antennas, and then they've got sonar. And, like, women are just, what we look like. Not like aliens versus humans.
Yeah. It's not a big difference, but it's a vast difference. Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would say that, with that episode, it was wonderful to see Linda, to talk with Linda. We actually brought a lot of wonderful stories out of each other. And it isn't, I would say that a lot of what we talked about pertained to men as well. It pertained to all human beings with a conceptual consciousness. I mean, really. So, but I would say, if there are any, for all the men who are listening right now, my question to you is, if you were to be a woman, like if you had a choice, like to be a woman for a day, what kind of woman would you be, or who would you be? Would you be, Audrey Hepburn or Katharine Hepburn, or, would you be a femme fatale? Would you be Patricia Neal in The Fountainhead, or would you be Greta Garbo? Actually, that would be nice. I'd love to be Greta Garbo, but what kind of woman would you like to be? Would you like to be perhaps a lady of wrestling, with being, big and buff with lots of muscles? What would you like to do? Would you like to be perhaps a dancer, a ballerina? How would you like to experience your womanhood if you you had a day where you could just wake up and have one day? I'm just interested because honestly, women are pretty great. Men are really, really wonderful. And I'll have to give some thought about, like, if I woke up tomorrow and if I wanted to be a man, what kind of man would I want to be? I think I kind of know, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to give that some thought.
I love that because in our episode on masculinity and femininity and other related conversations, we've said, yeah, you've got to have role models, and not that you, in some fake way, try to be that guy, but just, I want to build myself, and I want a little bit of this from that guy, and a little bit of that from that guy, and a little bit more panache, but a little bit more toughness, but a little more sensitivity, and by seeing, well, damn, you can't do all that, but you see somebody who actually manifests all of that, and you're like, that's the direction I want to go. Great fun in the chat, incidentally, because, we mentioned Jennifer, who was good enough to visit you while I was gone, thousands of miles away. Yeah. And the fun thing is that Jim Ashley said, "Hi, Jennifer Lionberger, whenever you get here." And then, in the chat here, 5 comments later, it's Jennifer Lionberger saying hi. So hello, Jennifer. Good to see you. And I love our chat. The chat is the best part of the show. It really is. I just need to make sure I don't miss too much of it there, which means I need to let you talk more. Yeah,
so basically, Frank also says that, he says, Robert, I just learned the Mill Worker, which is a song by James Taylor.
Yep.
And he says he nailed it. I can send you a chart I made.
Oh, that would be good.
That's wonderful.
I'm lousy with finger picking. And so James Taylor, I just bat out the chords, and it's never very good for James Taylor. So I would love to see whatever notes that you made on that. And it's challenging, too, because Frank always plays 12-string guitar, which for me is a little harder on the fingers. You got 2 strings for each, they call it a course. Each one of the 6 courses is 2 separate. It's harder. Bottom line, it's harder. So Frank is pretty awesome that way.
Yeah, and what kind of woman would Frank like to be for a day? He says the Jane Goodall type. There you go.
There you go. Sounds like an adventure.
That's absolutely right.
Incidentally, going back to the question, what are your comfort foods and your comfort items? Petya answered with a good list. She said oatmeal of any kind, soups, herb teas, warm food. Favorite muffins with raspberries, walnuts, and dates. Ooh. And she says, I love cozy blankets. We do have we have the cozy blanket here. I don't know we're necessarily going to use it.
Here you are.
And the big pillows, because when you're on the comfy couch,
these are really nice. They're like that kind of synthetic Sherpa sort of thing, and it's really nice.
Yes. Yeah. Problem is, you get too comfortable at night, you don't make it back to bed. That can be an issue, but I'd rather be too comfortable than not comfortable. Enough. Ian says, are you all going to start doing short videos like your own? And that is exactly the right question. The answer is we have promised you that, and we have failed completely, but it's going to happen.
It will happen soon.
And it was part of my trip to Arizona, actually, because I spent some time planning that out, making notes, talking to some very intelligent people who happen to be my brothers and sister. And yes, good question. Yes, we are going to start doing short videos like your own, and yes, we are hoping it's going to do for us what it did for him, 150,000 views in some great video that goes viral. And I don't know what the one he had that went that viral was. I've got to look it up, see what the topic is. And then we could just copy it. We could just do the exact same thing. We'll get onto a camera and, hi, my name is Yaron Brook. Well, maybe we won't copy him quite that exactly. But yes, good question, and it is going to happen. Jim Ashley says, I'd like to be Lisbeth Salander. It's partly the hidden tattoo artist inside me. I think that was the heroine of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, she's a real badass, isn't she? She's great.
Yeah, well, but the question is, do you want to go through the kind of life experiences that would build you up to be, that would toughen you in that way? I guess that would be
I would. That would be fun.
You want to go through hell just to get that toughened up?
I would be for her. Well, now this is just for a day now. I would actually want to go lead up to the experiences of what she went through. But speaking of badasses, Jennifer would like to be Clint Eastwood for a day. You know what? I would love to be Clint Eastwood for a day, too. That would be great.
I'd love to be Clint Eastwood for a day, and then you could be with Clint Eastwood for a day. We'll work on that. We'll get right on that. Ian, incidentally, says French fries are good comfort food.
Yes.
Takes me back to Greenfield Village, because if you go to the restaurant, there's more than one, but if you go to the restaurant that's in the museum, they actually serve, with their French fries, they serve Kensington ketchup. And if you know ketchups, it's funny that there's a song by the band Bare Naked Ladies. They would make this an adult show again. Bare Naked Ladies is a song, If I Had $1 Million. And there are little more spoken than sung sequences in between the verses where they jokingly say things. There's the little part where they're talking about having a little treehouse and having fancy mustards. They say, well, they have Dijon mustard, fancy mustard. Why don't they have fancy ketchups? The reason I mention this is in the Henry Ford Museum's fancy restaurant, they have fancy ketchup. They have Kensington ketchup. Now, the original Heinz factory house is there, but they don't have Heinz ketchup in the Plum Market Henry Ford Museum restaurant. Long story short, unacceptable. Fancy ketchup is unacceptable. If you're going to serve French fries, it's got to be Heinz ketchup. So saith I.
You're going to have to email info@thehenryford.org and give them an official complaint.
Send that to the Plum Market people. I want Heinz I don't want Kensington fancy ketchup where it tastes like they put all these other vegetables in it.
Well,
it doesn't taste like ketchup.
Speaking of delicious, comfortable food,
yes,
Jennifer definitely votes for Krispy Kreme donuts.
Krispy Kreme donut. I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy. I kind of get the Krispy Kreme thing.
They're good.
They're crispier, and they're not crispy, but they've got a little more of a texture, surface, glaze.
Right. They got that crunchy sort of glaze on.
Whereas Dunkin' Donuts to me are the ideal donuts, and I'm a dip in milk kind of guy, and they're better for that too. I don't know. We may have to arm wrestle over that one, Jennifer. That may have to happen.
Oh, Patio wants to be...
I like Krispy Kreme donuts. Don't get me wrong. I do like them.
Yeah.
But,
Well, Jennifer, if you want to ever come over with some Krispy Kreme donuts, you are welcome to come over and share a box.
Well, the best Krispy Kreme donuts, the very best ones they've got, are the ones that Jennifer brings over because Jennifer brought donuts. So there you go.
Yes, Patio wants to be Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo for a day. Wouldn't that be fun?
Wow.
That would be really amazing. I don't know if I would want to live in those times. I would like to be Leonardo or Michelangelo, like in 2022, where there's plumbing.
But just imagine once he got up to speed,
Yes.
he would take today's current level of not just technology, but art and creativity.
Yeah.
And what would he produce? So,
Right. Although it'd be kind of fun to paint on a ceiling, have laying down all comfy in your pajamas, and then you're just painting on the ceiling on a scaffold.
I wonder what Michelangelo could have done now if he had religious liberty. Yeah, that would have been interesting to see. What would have happened? So yes, again, I'm listening to Life on Earth, enjoying that show that Amy did with Linda. I wasn't there. It's just the girls, and it's outstanding. And yeah, the topic was how to be a passionate and intellectual woman.
Yes.
And the topic that came up that Amy raised was, what are your earliest memories of your first intellectual values, your first-hand intellectual thoughts?
Right, when you first had, you realized, I'm having opinions. I'm actually comparing and contrasting and asking myself what is right and wrong, and kind of, evaluating behaviors of other people and yourself. And it could be something as simple as like what I did when I was four years old, and I had two convictions when I was 4. Well, number one, I wanted to be a dancer. Number two, I thought that men were more interesting than women. And number 3, I thought that black women were the most beautiful women in the world. And that kind of came up with my hero, Debbie Allen of Fame, in her movie, and her TV show with Debbie Allen. So anyway, I just cherished her, just loved her and I was only 4. But you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be that kind of story. It could be, I talked with a gentleman that night after the show with Linda on Clubhouse, and he said, well, I really didn't start thinking for myself or thinking very independently until I was about 20, and that's okay too. And, so, yeah.
My independence, came in stages.
Yes. Right. Mine did too.
The earliest super duper independent, when it comes up for me, it comes up as rebellion. So that would have been early teenage years, reading fantasy, science fiction, Robert Heinlein, Piers Anthony, Isaac Asimov, and these alternate ideas about the way the world could be. That's part of what you get from fiction, and especially science fiction.
Right. Because
it's not just, look at this extremely different idea of the world, but look at this extremely different idea of how things could be, with the idea that things could be better, they could be improved. There are ideals, presumably even moral ideals, that we can aspire to, above and beyond ordinary life and what everybody just kind of seems to accept. I learned later that you can find that in great fiction too, but as a young person I hadn't seen that. You don't get that from Holden Caulfield. I guess you get a little bit of that when you finally read To Kill a Mockingbird. But Catcher in the Rye wasn't going to get you there. Yeah.
And I had a lot of heroes. I really fell in love with Anne of Green Gables, and even like the Secret Garden. Those 2 books, and also the Anne of Green Gables, long form television movie in the 80s with
yes.
Megan Follows. That was really influential for me. About you've got Anne of Green Gables, very intellectual girl, and very well read, very imaginative, really passionate, and she went on to college and. Just wonderful stuff, wonderful influences, and so when I was talking with Linda, I came up with kind of a list of more childhood intellectual passions or things that I just love to do, and I liked, for instance, teaching my stuffed animals. Like I would teach Miss Charlie Opossum here math and spelling on a chalkboard. I would actually have them all lined up in several rows, and just like a classroom, and I would teach them spelling and math. I love teaching. That's actually one of my favorite things to do. gosh, I mean, I loved my dictionary and my encyclopedias. I was second place in my school system for a spelling bee. So I loved spelling. I loved memorizing things. And, but, going through all these and making this inventory of these sort of intellectual pursuits that I had when I was younger and the ones that I currently have, taking this inventory, I love to read, I love to write, and all of that, but I would like to do more note-taking. Actually, sometimes I watch really wonderful informative YouTube videos like this that we're producing right now, and I kind of let it wash over me a little bit too much, and I'm sort of passively listening, or if I'm listening to something on the Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube channel, especially our show Life on Earth on Thursdays, every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I just kind of let it wash over me, and I shouldn't do that. I should be having something to write something down, right then and there. I should have, so I can take some notes. I want to take more notes. So, yep.
I like that. I do that, but I do it with as I write the show, I do it with legal pads. And the one thing that I've never done, and now in retrospect, I wish it had been a habit, I had that sense that you should never defile a book. Some people will shudder if you ever dog-ear a page, fold it over to mark your page. I may have done that once or twice, but I've never written in the margins. And that is something I should have done and wish I had done. I've got books on the shelf that are almost pristine. I've got other ones that are all torn up just from having gone through so many times. But none of them have notes in them, and I wish I had done that. Something that I recommend if you are a younger listener, and we have a few of y'all out there, do that thing. There's a whole volume, for example, of Ayn Rand's Marginalia.
Yes.
Her writings in the margins of her own books. And there's all sorts of wisdom in these notes that she wrote to herself for her own thinking, that either by writing it down you remember it better later, or when you go through the book a second time, you see your own notes.
Yeah, I'd rather not have things wash over me so much. I actually want to write things down so that I can have better retention. Now, we have another comment in the YouTube chat. Ian says, Piers Anthony was great back in the day, but doesn't hold up that well.
Yeah, but, I agree. I haven't read any of those. We used to read, like, the Xanth series, for example. Haven't read any of that since I was a teenager. The Robert Heinlein stuff has held up well. The more fanciful stuff, Richard Bach, for example, I've mentioned before, because as flighty as his metaphysics, as goofy as some of that could be, the wisdom was good and has had a big impact on my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Ian, for your suggestion about the 1 minute videos or the shorts. He's
I'm
suggesting
seeing
we
good
do that.
advice there. All the viral videos are very antagonistic. Might not work with your style. Well, you would be surprised. I certainly would be surprised. But
yes.
no.
Yeah, I think the trick is to come up with 1 minute of content that we can edit, and we can put together a really contentious, really antagonistic sounding, sentence to describe it.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll be like,
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Everything you know about values and finding your passion is wrong.
Wrong. You're wrong.
And then spend, the other 50 seconds saying, and here's what you can do about that. Well, okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you're making a good point. And it's one of the things I've thought, even in regard to the long form, this one that's actually 5 minutes long, is that, sometimes I listen to it afterwards and I'm like, you guys sounded like you were in PJs. Talking to myself, you sounded like you were comfortable. You didn't bring the passion. But then sometimes I go too far and it's Amy looks at me funny because, oh my gosh, Robert's putting on the radio voice. That's right. It's Sunday, Motor City Speedway, monster trucks. And there's a happy medium out there somewhere doing their own soothsaying. No, there's a happy medium to be found, and that is what we need to find. But you're right, for these 1 minute videos, I think we need to pour it on. Because we're not that antagonistic, but we can be that dramatic.
Oh, we can definitely be more dramatic and louder and angrier sounding.
That's right. And this is America. And in America, more is better. Yeah.
And in America, possums are awesome. That's right. Prove me wrong.
Now I see unsigned 32-bit individualist. I actually know who that is. In the chat, and it's cool that he's listening live. This is somebody I know listens to the shows religiously, and by religiously I just mean a lot, not like, but anyway, he says, for focusing on key points in books, I use Post-it tags to flag key paragraphs. My copy of America's Revolutionary Mind is 5% heavier from all the tags. Love that.
That's great.
And if you've seen me using books, this is usually on Thursdays, but if you see me using books as reference, you know I do the same thing, and I've got Post-it notes sticking out. And the funny thing is, I don't buy those Post-it note tags, the ones that it would make sense for me to use. No, I just use full-size Post-it notes. And the good thing about those, though, is I can write a lot more on them. So I guess it all works out.
Right.
It's a good thing and good advice.
It depends on what you want to do with it. If you want retention, I would say take the notes. You know, like what I was, and I need to go back and do The Objectivism Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff, and I was taking notes for each chapter, and it was so helpful, and it so improved my understanding and retention and my integration in what I already knew, spiral theory of knowledge, and all that great stuff. But yeah, if you just want a quick reference, and you put in some sticky notes in a book and say, you know, this is where I'm, this is my favorite passage, you know, however, you know, it depends on what you want. So
there's some great stuff in the chat that I'm not reading out loud. Some of it's a little personal. Well, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I guess it's public anyway, but it's fun. Jennifer, incidentally, keeps going back to Clint Eastwood, and I guess that would be her man of choice if she wasn't already married.
Her crush.
Her crush.
Her love interest.
Don't we all have a crush?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, Clint Eastwood in the Dirty Harry films. My God, is so great. I mean, it's not, he wasn't so much of my crush, but I want to be him. I want to be like, a man's got to know his limitations.
He walks away, and while the other guy blows up in the car. Oh, he left the bomb in the car.
Whoops!
Oh, I guess we should have gave a spoiler alert there.
No. I'm just saying, whoops, that he didn't quite understand what he was doing there.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but no, I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know, I might want to be, I don't know, who would I want to be? I really like, I wouldn't mind being John Wayne for a day. That would be nice, especially when he was younger. Perhaps, you know, when he didn't have quite a limp. But John Wayne, oh, you know what? I really want to be Mikhail Baryshnikov when he was younger and he was able to, you know, jump up and do all sorts of crazy ballet moves. I would love that for a day.
Yes.
Oh, that would be great.
Yep. Chandler's back on the Clint Eastwood. The Man with No Name is so, absolutely, The Man with No Name is so cool. For some of you, anybody who doesn't know The Man with No Name, if you haven't yet seen the 3 films in the series that started with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you've got to see those films. And it's great. They never give this character a name, and so he has become known as the Man with No Name. But yes, absolutely, if you've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and for a few dollars more, what was the other film in that series? If you haven't seen those, they are must-see films.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of comments here. Jim says, regarding retention and note-taking, he says, I underline things and write in the margins of books I own, except for my Ayn Rand books and most other objectivist written books. The reason is that I cannot always remember where some line or paragraph is in those other books, but I can almost always remember where an important thought or passage is in the objectivist books. And if I had to underline or comment on everything that was important in those books, it would clutter up the pages. I want things nice and visually clear in her books and those of other objectivist writers. Yeah, I know it's a tough choice. It's a tough life, Jim.
Yeah, as Ursula, the philosopher Ursula tells us, life's full of tough decisions, isn't it? Because Lauren at the same time says, I have come to love making journals look like paper tacos, so full, but have not added notes to convert books this way yet. New goal.
You know what
I like that.
You know what I found recently while I was digging through all of my boxes of old stuff was my my very first paperback of Atlas Shrugged, and it is so disintegrated. I went ahead and I put mailing, like clear mailing tape on the binder, and then the two pages, the cover and the back cover, to try to keep it together. But I mean, there's just pages falling out of it, and I don't know, there may actually be some missing pages as well, but it is it is pretty destroyed. So it's definitely not pristine anymore. But I have other copies, of course. But
yes.
Yeah.
Well, incidentally, Chandler reminds me that the first film in that series of films was A Fistful of Dollars, in the series of 3 films directed by Sergio Leone. So-called spaghetti westerns. Not because there was any spaghetti in them, but because they were filmed and produced in Italy, of all places. Not where you would expect to see a western made, but 3 great films and just this great character.
Yep. Yes. So
good stuff.
So back to intellectual passions and values. Robert, what are some of your intellectual passions or habits?
It's funny because you asked me about this earlier, and I completely drew a blank. I don't think I have any intellectual values or passions or pursuits, and then Amy immediately said, "Well, for relaxation, you play Scrabble."
Yes.
Incidentally, I have to tell folks I used to play Scrabble before they sold their EA, Electronic Arts version of their software. Mm-hmm. Somebody else took it over, made this software called Scrabble Go that was all quiche, colors, and nonsense, and I ended up switching over to a platform that is also all goofy colors and nonsense, but not as annoying, which is, I never thought I would say this, Words with Friends.
Yes, Words with Friends.
To me, Words with Friends was just a bastardization of the proper game, which was Scrabble. And then Scrabble became so annoying that I actually... So the point is, if anybody's ever looking to play a Scrabble-like game with me, you're probably going to find me on Words with Friends, and you're probably not going to find me on any of the Scrabble platforms. If they would ever come back with the classic Scrabble game, then I would go back. And I know that the people who created Scrabble Go did, after that introduction and EA removed the original game, they did make a version within Scrabble Go that's a little more faithful, but it's their interface, everything about it is terrible. Anyway, point is, I have a few of those kind of relaxing things that I do. I've been known to do digital jigsaw puzzles. And I have a couple of real jigsaw puzzles I need to get to. So, a little bit of that kind of thing. But
well, a couple things here. We've got... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just...
Yeah.
No, that's fine. You go ahead.
Yeah, so we've got... I think it's about Clint Eastwood. Seamus in the YouTube comment says, pretending to be the man with no name is 90% of the reasons to own a poncho. So, as a matter of fact, Robert, you own a couple of ponchos, as a matter of fact.
I do. Well, a poncho is... Everybody should own a poncho.
Even if you're a woman.
A poncho is not just an all-purpose comfort bit of clothing to wear.
Yeah.
It's an all-purpose Halloween costume. And the great thing is... And I also have sombreros as well. The great thing about owning a poncho and a sombrero, it used to be the laziest Halloween costume you could wear. If you don't have a Halloween costume, or if you don't like wearing a lot of makeup, you don't want it to be complicated, you just throw on a poncho and a sombrero and you're done. Mm-hmm. But the great thing is, because of the modern cultural sensitivities, a sombrero and a poncho?
I think that's past.
It's terribly insulting, and that makes it edgy.
So edgy.
So it's no longer the world's laziest Halloween costume. It's also the world's edgiest Halloween. So I immediately
you have to have a real badge of courage to wear that badge of courage.
That's right. I immediately got extra cachet wearing a poncho and a sombrero. I got a little panache there where before it just looked like, oh, this guy's too lazy to get a real Halloween costume.
So we've got, Chandler says the other 10% reasons to own a poncho is my mom made me wear it for a rainy day.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's
Very funny.
those plastic rain ponchos, which incidentally are kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
You should always have one of those in your glove compartment of your
Right.
car, or two if you're...
Especially if you live in New Orleans, because the rain in New
Oh, my
Orleans
gosh.
comes down in buckets, like all of a sudden. It's
Yeah.
just, and you know what? An umbrella doesn't do it. I don't care how big that umbrella is; it's just not going to protect you.
No. In New Orleans, you need to have rain ponchos handy at the ready.
Yes.
Yes.
And so Ian mentions that. And Chandler says they're talking about Wordle.
Wordle.
The new game, which
I have not played Wordle
I haven't
yet.
played that yet. However, I have heard that, speaking of friends and fun and intellectual pursuits, we got together with some friends last night and we played a game called Codenames.
Codenames is fun.
Yeah. Oh, if you haven't done it, you should do it. It's so much fun.
Yes.
It's basically you have a list of words in front of you on cards, and you're trying to draw categorizations so that you can name another word that is connected to that particular word or words in that list. And then you go look at your partner and you say, the word shoe. And that's because there's the word foot and the word laces and then the word leather, in that pile of words, and you're hoping that person will be able to guess what you are alluding to with just that one word clue.
It's funny, it takes a couple of minutes to figure out how to play the game, but once you do, it's extremely
So
simple and
amazing.
enormously challenging.
And it's so satisfying.
Yes.
It really is.
So yeah, definitely recommend Codenames. It's a word guessing game that they kind of dress it up as a sort of spies and intrigue kind of game. But it's a word game, and it's great fun.
Yeah.
And
Ian says that we should bring it to Ocon, and absolutely.
it's a good idea.
We'll do it.
But we usually just bring karaoke.
We'll do both.
Although we can't bring that to London. That's too much gear.
No.
But certainly Washington, D.C. Ah, yes.
Yeah, Jim mentions that he's giving us, I don't know what this is in relation to, but he says a MacGuffin is an object or device in a movie or a book that serves merely as a trigger for the plot.
Yes, it's almost like a red herring.
Yes.
It's an Alfred Hitchcock idea that there should be a device, or an item, something that everybody wants, the Maltese Falcon, something like that, around which the plot centers. And it's often almost irrelevant to the plot, other than it draws the attention and ties things together. It's fun to figure out what is the MacGuffin. I don't even remember the origin of that, but I'm sure it's on Wikipedia why Alfred Hitchcock referred to that as MacGuffin.
Yeah, if anybody would like to go ahead and put in what your intellectual passions are in the chat, either on Facebook or YouTube. And while you're in YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. Just go ahead and do a little click. It's very easy.
Good.
You've got a little mouse here and you just click. Please do that. Please support us on robertnasir.com with PayPal or Patreon. But we'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah,
In a few seconds.
If anybody has any last minute intellectual values they would like to share, I will say that one of the things that I didn't mention this on my show with Linda on the Life on Earth, but there was this lady who she was a bit heavy set, and she almost looked like Madeline Murray O'Hare, but she wasn't. And she had this very, very black hair, and she was much older, and she had, she had very dark makeup on, and she was like on the PBS channel. I don't know if it was CBC or PBS. Ian, let me know. But this was in the 80s, in the late 80s, and she would come on and she would talk about a specific philosopher and then that philosopher's ideas. And it was done in about a half an hour to an hour show, and she would kind of go through as systematically as she could these different philosophical ideas that this person held. And I was so enamored with it. And then they took it down, and then they changed it to like 6 a.m. in the morning, and it was really hard to actually watch. And I cannot for the life of me find who this lady was who was talking about these philosophers on this show, either on PBS or CBC.
Well, help us out.
Yeah, help a girl out. So, anyway, I just want to give a little shout out to that because I found that very fascinating as a teenager.
All right. Well, my homework for the week, because I do have homework every week, let you know what I'll be doing for the next 7 days, and you can join me on this too. My homework for the week is I'm going to keep a comforts log, a comforts inventory. And the reason is I just got back from traveling, as you know, and it was fun because I came from Arizona back to Michigan on Friday night. Anybody who knows the weather up here knows that I came from, well, Arizona to ice and snow and got off the airplane in my shorts, and I knew what I was coming into, but it was just fun to still be in shorts and walking, trudging through the snow.
Yeah, when it's like, 15 degrees out.
That was fun. And the weekend has been kind of a winding down for that. We went out to Lansing and visited friends last night, but other than that, it's been kind of comfortable. And now I need to amp up. And now I need to get back to my pursuit of my intellectual and existential values. So I'm going to be keeping a comforts inventory. We keep food logs. And you do that for a while just to get back in touch with, I didn't even realize, wow, I've been eating like empty carbs for lunch every day of the week. Or I've been, whatever the habit is that you've fallen into that you kind of know but don't really know until you write it down. And I need to do something similar with my comforts. I've got to really amp things up this week. Really got to work harder, get more done. So I'm going to be keeping a comforts log. And when I find that I am indulging in my comforts, and even in the things like jigsaw puzzles or playing word games, I want to make a note of that. And I want to get a better idea just what is my comfort to hard work ratio these days? Get a better handle on that. So I will be keeping a comforts inventory or comfort log this week. You're welcome to join me on that adventure. See how that works out for you. What exactly are you doing with the hours of your day? At least for me, that's going to be handy. My Post-it note of the week. I'm not going to explain this one, but my Post-it note for the week is a quote from Ayn Rand. Leonard Peikoff asked Ayn Rand at one point, after studying both her literature and her philosophy and knowing a lot about Ayn Rand, he asked her about something that she didn't explicitly address. He said to Ayn Rand, what does philosophy have to say about sex? And Ayn Rand's answer, what she said to Leonard Peikoff was, as he reports it, it says that sex is good. So my Post-it note for the week says, sex is good. The neat thing about sex, whether you're married or dating, heck, whether you even have a partner or you're on your own for now, the great thing about sex, and the reason I have a Post-it note that says sex is good, is because I find it amusing. I find it funny. I find it very benevolent in that sex is like pizza. And what I mean by that is, even bad pizza is great. But really, really good pizza is transcendent. So the great thing about sex is that sex is good.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an affirmation of the benevolent universe premise to remember that you're surrounded by food opportunities, but you're also surrounded by romance and physical romance opportunities and several other things in life, like music and movies and just opportunities for massive pleasure that don't take an extreme amount of time, capital, resources. It's kind of amazing. And it relates, as you can tell, to my comfort inventory. I want to get an idea when I'm engaged in these various comforts, the easy values in life versus the more difficult ones. So my Post-it note for the week says, sex is good. Can't resist reminding myself of that benevolent aspect of life throughout this week. You're also welcome to take a Post-it note, write that on it, and join me on that as well. And with that said...
Can I say something about sex? Real quick.
Yes, please.
Sex is an all-encompassing pleasure. So it's, in its best form and its best context, you are a virtuous person who works hard, who gets to bring forth their ideas into reality, who has a lot of achievements in life, and you are having sex with somebody else who has that same life perspective, in whatever degree that is, and you want to celebrate life, and you want to find the best in life, and you want to feel the absolute best pleasure in life. So along with that, so as an intellectual person, as an intellectual woman, it's really important to experience your physical being and experience all-encompassing pleasures, physically, intellectually, physically, spiritually, all of it, the whole package. So
experience the package.
Yeah, experience the
package. Well, I'm glad you brought it back to this, actually, yes. Because in the show notes is a link to Amy's Life on Earth episode with Linda Cordair, How to Be a Passionate and Intellectual Woman. Mm-hmm. And as always, the show notes will be posted right after the show with links to all of the things we were talking about, including the things that happened on this day, including the quirky national holidays, which it turns out tie in with everything else that we talked about. You will find those notes on my Facebook page, on the YouTube page where you watched this video. Links to it will be from my Twitter. If you're listening to the audio-only version, you can find those links as well. You know we are on all of the podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Hi Joe Rogan next door, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found. You will find those show notes online. At robertnasir.com, you'll find a link to them. At robertnasir.com, you'll also find a link to our Patreon and PayPal accounts. You can contribute to the show. Many of you already do. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. New subscriber this month, 2 new subscribers this month on Patreon. Thank you for that. And applause goes out to you. We're still working out ways to give extra bonuses to those of you who contribute, but believe me, we deeply, deeply appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on our Facebook 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir group. Link to that is at robertnasir.com. Everything you want in the world is at robertnasir.com. And as always, thank you for joining us. You are the reason we do what we do. We talk about what we talk about. We have these fun little get-togethers. Big plans for 2022. More are coming. And as pointed out in the chat, yes, we are going to be publicizing more. So if you want to help us out with that, go to the youtube.com version of this show at youtube.com/robertnasir. Like the show. Subscribe to the channel. Give it a share. Share it out somewhere and said, these guys so crazy, you should listen to this. Whatever you can do, it is appreciated. Or just being here, just listening, just being who you are, the awesome selves that you are, sharing in the chat. Cannot thank you enough. And so that is why, as always, we wish you success. We wish you happiness. We wish you, in accordance with what Amy had to say, great satisfaction in all of the ways that that is possible to you. And as always, we wish you love.